Five. Happy New Year and welcome to 2025, everybody. I am Keenan Brown, realtor with Judy Lindsay Team Realty, here as always with Denzel Sullivan, my partner in real estate. Denzel is not a realtor, by the way, if you're from the board and listening to this, but we are very excited to bring you our 13th episode of the Winnipeg Market Watch podcast, where we talk about all of the data from the previous month, the previous year, and everything related to Winnipeg real estate. Denzel, thanks again for being here with me for 13 episodes. It feels like we just started this the other day, but now it's been a whole year, and we've got a big episode of reflection ahead of us.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I can't believe that that it's been a year already. I feel like time just flew by. And I noticed that, when we're in real estate, um, the seasons change and you don't really feel it so much because you're just so busy doing things. And then here's my daughter.
Yeah, well, you couldn't have said it more accurately there.
Yeah.
It's definitely a crazy business, and sometimes you blink and there goes a year. So for today, we again do not have a guest for you guys, but we are going to take this opportunity to make this somewhat of a year in review episode. But alongside that, we're going to make it an episode where we talk very broadly about what our expectations are for 2025 and what we thought of 2024 now that all the data is in full. So without further ado, let's actually look at the numbers that came out here earlier this week. This episode is being recorded on Sunday, the 5th of January, for those of you who are wondering, and will likely be released on Monday, the 6th of January. So the year ended with the benchmark price at 414,900, which is down from 417,500 in November. That brings us for a year-to-date gain of 9.21%. We are about 1.35% from the from the 2024 high and about 3% from the all-time high. Now, when I looked at this data, Denzel, my first thought was, holy smokes, our market is resilient. We went from a June high to a December low in basically 1.35%, which is almost exactly what we saw in 2021. And I think we all know what happened after 2021. I've spoken a lot about what I think is going to happen here in 2025. And I want to know, as somebody that's been trading real estate in the market this entire time, first of all, seeing how this year played out and seeing how little of a decline there was into the slow months, what's on your mind right now as we enter our first or second week of the new year here?
Yeah, so I think that with the demand a lot stronger than what most were probably anticipating around this time of year. I think we're in for a really busy spring market with some high sale prices ahead of us. Um, I'm not entirely sure what is going to happen with interest rates, how much more, they're going to come down if they are coming down more, that is. But the more and more conversations that I have with people, especially, with it being the new year, you talk to some of the people in your family, friends, and ask them kind of what's on their mind and the goals that they might have for the upcoming year. And there's a lot of people that I know in their early 20s, early 30s, wanting to buy a house. People that
Yes.
were not in the market in 2023 and that were not in the market in 2022. And so we're getting a handful of buyers, or not, well, probably more than a handful of buyers entering the market as just this is brand new to them. They weren't there in 2022, they weren't there in 2023. So like this is their first exposure to a real estate market. And so they're not gonna know exactly what prices are going for or what houses are going for, sorry, and be as in touch with what's happening. So I think that the spring market ahead of us is going to be awesome. I think that if you have any inventory to sell, in the cold months, so January, February, March, and then it obviously starts to heat up in April, but I think it would be a great time to list something. This month I have probably about six houses coming to market sporadically through the month, and I think that uh, you know, more than ever, I'm super focused on just getting those done, making sure they show really well, and yeah, just overall really excited to see what the market brings.
That's an awesome point you made there about a lot of people entering the market for the first time without really any prior experience. I'm working with a handful of first time buyers right now myself, and while they were somewhat familiar with kind of what was going on in 2022, they didn't really care because they weren't actively participating. But they're asking questions like, "Hey, is it normal for there to be a ton of offers on a house in the early season or the late season?" And oh, I just got my pre-approval and it's actually higher than I thought, which has been happening a lot lately now that rates have gone down a little bit. And more interestingly, I'm hearing a lot more of people wanting to get into real estate investing for the very first time because I tell you what, in early 2023, one of the last things I heard people talking about was wanting to get into real estate investing when we were near the bottom of that market. And I think it's going to be a refreshing take this year to see that people are willing to put more money into housing, whether it's for a rental or maybe they're going to try their first flip or maybe they're going to burr something. Who knows? But I do think that the investor category will be a huge factor in the 2025 market, almost for sure. So I'm glad
Yeah.
you brought that up.
Yeah, and just before we move on to the next thing, I just want to
Yeah.
piggyback off that point, Keenan. The
Mhm.
the new investors entering the market, they also are going to have a a mindset that, I mean, this is a lot different than 2020 and 2021, but they too will also have kind of a blank canvas in terms of their perspectives on on real estate. And I think for anyone listening, if you are new, if you're planning to buy, I think that it's super important that you hire a really good realtor like Keenan Brown,
Thank you.
um, to make sure that you aren't overpaying for stuff. Because if you are only finding deals on the MLS, because sometimes that's all that's available to some people, especially when you're starting out, it's important that you have the right guidance. Um, because if I can help anyone kind of with some advice after the past 5 years of being a landlord flipping houses, it's just making sure that you have the right team. And so yeah, just wanted to add that.
That's it's a great point to make, and we will actually return to some of those ideas there as it comes to making good decisions, especially when buying on MLS as an investor in especially the early part of the season, but actually just generally in an upward market. So back to the data here, we now have the supply picture from last month in front of us, and one of the trends we've been seeing for the last 6 months is supply generally being lower than anything we've seen in either 2022 or three, often at very similar levels to 2020, but usually still above the very, very busy 2021 market. Now, one of the big things that I've noticed here is there are about 20 to 25% fewer homes available every month in the back half of 2024 than there has been for any of the past few years. And when I see that alongside higher prices and average sales seeming to climb up until this month, where it went down for the first time in a long time, my first thought as a realtor is, holy smokes, this just means that selection is way down and people are still going to pay whatever they think is necessary to pay to get into property. So, Denzel, when you see that supply is low, and again, we've talked a lot in general about listing, and you mentioned you've got 6 houses coming to market here in January. Can you tell us a little bit about, as a both a buyer and a seller of real estate, when you see that supply is this low, how urgent do you feel to get property on the market, even if it is a little early in the year for the traditional run up to occur?
Oh, I have ultra urgency to
Ultra
to
urgency.
get my yeah, ultra urgency to get this to get the properties on the market. It's like I'll be consistently saying this throughout today's episode, but it's really important that you take advantage of the early parts of the year where most agents and people, their natural or I guess you could say the average sentiment for most people is that, I'm going to wait until it gets a little bit nicer out, so that I could show off my yard or whatever it is, or take care of some of the exterior items that might need to get done before we list our property. to sell their house. I think that if you are someone who's selling right now is the time, because here's what happens. You have pent up demand from people who were looking in the fall, right? Who didn't end up finding the house that they wanted to move in. In addition to that, you also have everyone who is, getting their pre-approvals in December, now ready to buy after the New Year's. So we have this massive pool of buyers and a low supply of sellers. And obviously, just economics, high demand, low supply is going to equal to higher prices. And so if you're, looking to take advantage of the market and really see it, hopefully the best outcome possible for your house, right now is the time to list. Because I remember in 2023, or sorry, 2024, uh, Keenan, we were tracking basically everything that was going on the market during
Mhm.
the first 3 months of the year, and we were like, "Holy crap! I can't believe that sold for that price." And like I'll give you guys all of an example. There was a house in the Maples, a little bungalow, it was like 1,000 square feet, listed for I want to say I think 469 or something like that. It went 506,000. Like we're
I
talking
remember that.
not
I remember that.
1980 1980s bungalow, um, you know, updated double detached garage, but someone paid 500 grand for that. Now, whatever, sorry, I'm a little sick, so excuse me. But, you know, I, I grew up in the Maples, and just to think that someone would pay that price for like to live there is crazy to me. But hey, it's something that people, especially if you're an investor or an agent or anything like that, you're in the business, you need to be constantly shifting your mind to adjust to whatever the prices are currently, right? Like if I brought a 2023 mindset into 2025, I wouldn't buy anything, right? Same
Yeah.
way if I brought the 2020 mindset into 2023, I'd probably fail miserably because, timing matters, right? So yeah,
Of course.
that's my 2 cents on that.
It's a good point to make there. And actually, it's funny to say, like, we might be doing one of these episodes in as little as 2 or 3 years and talking about some of these individual deals that got done and went, wow, like, holy smokes, prices sure
Yeah.
changed already. Because there's often times that I look back at some of the sales that I would have made or houses that I had a hard time selling in like the first year of my career. And I just think, like, holy smokes, I can't believe I had a hard time selling that listing. And the price was, like, looking back, the price was a smoking deal, but at the time, I guess it was a little tight for whoever seemed to want to be there. But um, that pretty much sums up our opinion of the absorption chart. Which, by the way, for those of you who follow and have the article in front of you, December is typically a month that the Winnipeg market for all property enters the buyer's market territory, or at least the balanced territory. And for the first time since 2021, December resulted in a seller's market throughout the winter, which um,
Oh yeah.
leaves us on the year at a similar level of aggression as the pre 2014 real estate boom that kind of happened nationwide. And after each one of those years, the market was really, really hot the following year, with the exception of 2022, which was obviously a little bit of a different circumstance and how that one wrapped up. So, um, all of what Denzel said kind of applies to seeing that. And I know Denzel really likes the citywide absorption chart. He's mentioned a couple times that he enjoys looking at that one to kind of get a gauge on what's going on. But um, as a big fan of that chart, Denzel, do you have anything to add based on what you're seeing there?
Like I think that it is kind of again for me, I've been watching this for the past 3 years very closely, and almost every December kind of it's been in this seller's market position, and so I'm not too surprised to see it. I'm happy to see it, and yeah, not too much to say about the absorption rate in Winnipeg for for this year
Fair
or
enough.
for December.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, in terms of pricing strategy, multiple offers, and over or under list price, it looks like this December, the bidding war trend generally continued, with most houses still being priced in such a way that they weren't selling for asking price, which is normal seasonally. But I did think it was interesting that we had as many as 36+% of homes selling at or above asking. And I would imagine in January, just based on seasonality, it's often the case that those statistics could change in either direction, where it can either be less the case that multiple offers are popular, or it could be more the case that they're more popular. Um, Denzel, when it comes to pricing your listings, the ones that you've got coming up in January, are you looking to aim to do a blowout sort of strategy where you price it at kind of bottom dollar for what you can basically accept and just let the market come to you? Or are you hoping to price high and sit and wait and hope that as the market improves, somebody catches your price?
I think it depends on the area. I have one listing that's going to be coming in Garden City um, in the next few weeks here. And with that particular house, based on the activity that's been happening in that area, it appears that the blowout kind of play is, has been really successful for other people that have been selling property in Garden City. So it really varies on where the house is. If you're a flipper or someone who's doing a lot of buying and selling, you're going to be wanting to, know your numbers. I think that not everyone has the same level of risk taking. And when you have other people involved in some of the deals, like myself, whether it's JV partners or, lenders and things like that, it's not just you making that decision. So, it really depends. I have another property in St. Vital that's going to be coming to market, and I think with that particular house, we're just going to list it for what it's worth, and then look to either wait or see what happens with the market.
Fair enough. That's
Mhm.
that's a good answer. And for those of you out there listening, it's a super personal and super situational choice. So if you do want guidance on what's the most appropriate for you in your life, I'd really encourage you to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to talk you through whatever you need to hear in order to make that decision for you and your family. Now, talking about individual areas, first things first, I'm going to mention December was one of the months that I wrote a performance analysis article where I broke down the individual data over each MLS area. And I made several lists about how individual neighborhoods have performed in terms of price from three different timelines. Now, the crazy thing about the absorption on a monthly or a year to date basis is 2024 wrapped up with over or literally half of Winnipeg's active MLS areas uh, hitting 85% plus absorption, which I describe as very hot. I'm of the opinion that if you have, 8 or 9 out of 10 houses selling in any neighborhood in any given month, that is a pretty hot market. And that does not give buyers a lot of power. But the crazier thing to me is a lot of these areas that are experiencing absorption that high aren't necessarily middle market kind of neighborhoods. We're talking about areas that might be even a fair bit under the middle of the market, or even in some cases, areas that might be quite a bit more expensive. I'm going to point out one in particular here as 1P White Ridge has 93% absorption rate and average sale price that I'm going to double check this to make sure that I speak accurately here. But I believe it's a fair bit above the benchmark. Yeah, it's at 576. Benchmark's currently at 415, 900. Um, there's a few other examples of this, and you guys like take a second and go to the article and just first of all look at the list itself and see what's there. But as I've pointed out a couple times throughout this past year in 2024, a lot of the data has consistently been that the areas that have the 50s to 1970s bungalows that are priced at about the benchmark or like 10 or 15% in the other direction, they're the ones that are going to be perpetually hot. But now, given that the year wrapped up with so many of these other kind of more tertiary areas, even expensive ones, selling for so much, Denzel, how does that make you feel about possibly doing deals in riskier neighborhoods or more expensive neighborhoods in particular?
Yeah, so I actually, you and I spoke about this at kind of our year-end meeting, sort of thinking about
Mhm.
what went well and what went wrong with the projects that we had together at least. And I actually think that when it comes to home remodeling and fixing up property for resale, it's when you have an ARV that is, let's just use White Ridge for example, where the average sale price is something like 575,000. Generally, the deals and opportunities that you'll be able to find allow for you to do a good job of that renovation and put
Mhm.
together a proper house. Whereas, you buy a house in Winnipeg in the West End, Sergeant Park, and the average sale price is like 300 grand. There's going to be things in that house you might skip because, well, your buyer isn't really expecting that, right? Like a $500,000 house. So, especially with the interest rates coming down, affordability going up, and people that were in lower pre-approval amounts now able to afford, more, I definitely would consider doing deals in those areas so long as we can make the numbers work. If the margins are there, um, you know, we're going to go to where those opportunities are, regardless of where they are in the city. I think that I think that the during 2023 and the early parts of 2024, a lot of people were kind of skeptical about those areas because of their sale prices. Um, but when the market's trending upwards like this, and there's all of these things happening in our economy that's just kind of leaning more towards, you know, an upward trend that's likely going to happen this spring, taking on some risk to see that upside is I think worth it.
And I really like your answer there. And I think it boils down to the same thing we've been talking about on this podcast now for basically the last year, where it's don't worry so much about what the area is. Make a risk adjusted bet that it is going to work out within your own margin of safety, regardless of where the project happens to be. And if you're in a super expensive area, like, yeah, it gives you the opportunity to do a much better job, but of course it's more risk, especially by percent. Like if you have $1 million flip and you miss by 10%, like that is
Yeah,
insanely devastating. If you have a
yeah,
$200,000 flip and you miss by 10%, you'll probably live. But
yeah.
you know, kind of funny to think about it that way. But Denzel, that pretty much covers up the December data in and of itself. Um, I wanted to take a second here to talk a little bit more about 2025 predictions because we've had this underlying assumption in our entire conversation that we both think we are entering an upward market. And last episode, we talked a lot about how we expect pricing to get out of control. I made the bold prediction that we'd have a benchmark price high of 472,000, which so far, based on my polls on social media and my conversations with other people, I have been put firmly in the loony bin for suggesting that. Everybody seems to think I'm nuts and that I'm totally wrong. So we shall see. Maybe I am. I don't know. They're just like, well, you're just a dumb
Yeah, you
realtor.
never know.
Like, come on, you always call like the high calls every time, right? But I think I have a legitimate case to be made here. So another thing we've talked a lot about is supply in general, and I wanted to just call something out that as of about third week of December or so, just before Christmas, if you would have looked on MLS for what I consider to be one of the middle market homes, like the approximately benchmark price or 10 or 15% below, like classic bungalow 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s homes in anywhere but kind of the dangerous core parts of Winnipeg that most people wouldn't want to live by choice, you would have had about 25 homes to choose from citywide. And that does not filter out number of beds and baths. That does not filter out garages or not. That does not select for any other features or any other like cosmetic look or benefit that a buyer might want. That's only 24 or 25. Okay. To me, that is staggeringly low. And I don't think that most of those houses, like even if they did sell before the new year, I'm not sure that our rate of new supply entering is going to be sufficient to satisfy the new buyers that are coming in and looking for supply, because believe me, they are out there. I'm having the conversations, I'm seeing them out there. And when I see this kind of thing, this is how we end up in 3 to 4% gains months, like we did, like we
Yeah.
saw last year in 2024. Um, I know we've talked a lot about that kind of thing, Denzel, but as somebody who isn't an agent but talks about real estate a lot, as you said at the beginning of the episode, you've had a few conversations with people looking to jump in and buy this year. How often are people coming to you and saying, "Hey, man, like you've got a lot of houses, like can you help me find a deal?"
Yeah, I've probably had, because for those of you that have been listening, I do a lot of wholesaling as well. I've had two or three people almost daily ask me for stuff. You know, hey, is there any wholesale deals available? I'm looking to do a flip right away. I'm looking for land. So people are hungry for, like, to do deals right now. I think that it's just the time of year. You know, everyone has wrapped up their fall stuff. They've sold it. Now they're looking to get into new things, so that they have something to sell, in April and May of this year. So again, I think that there's a lot of experienced investors who are noticing that this feels awfully familiar to last year. And for anyone that was in business during 2020, it also feels kind of the same, both with the
Yeah,
combination of lower rates and as well as having uh, low supply and just high demand. If you've been in the business for at least more than five or more years, and you've been able to see at least a little bit of market swings, there's things that happen around you that really start to almost almost I need to find the word here, but it just happens where can you help me out with this one, Keenan?
well,
I'm trying. It's like,
I think I'm following, but
yeah,
I get the
if
idea for sure. I don't
yeah,
know what specific word you were searching for there, but I guess if you want me to finish your thought, I think what you were
that's
trying
okay.
to say is that if you've had the experience of the last 5 years, you can identify patterns.
Exactly.
And
Patterns. There you go. That's the word that I was looking for.
I would say for myself, like I know at this point as an agent, I can start to identify patterns too, because I've played this game enough, right?
Yeah.
Like when I start hearing buyers, especially first timers, coming to me saying, "Hey, I'm actually pre-approved for more than I thought." That's
Yeah.
a huge dog whistle to me. That okay, like the market's probably going to get hot here because most of these people are surprised. And
Yeah.
typically, even if the buyer says, like, I'm going to try to keep my pre approval, like, even though it's high, I'm going to try to keep my budget and what I want to spend far below my pre approval at about what I expected to get for, financial responsibility, etc. That's totally good. But then when they get the call that they're in a crazy bidding war and they find the perfect house, often that pre approval just gets nailed anyway. And
Mhm.
and for the record, I'm not the one suggesting that. That's them. They see that and
Yeah.
they go, you know what, this house is too perfect. And the phone call often goes like this. It's like, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. I need this house. Okay, well, take a second, like talk to your girlfriend or wife, and then send me a text when you're ready. Okay, I sent it. All right. We'll talk soon. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So, sorry to cut you off, Keenan. Go
no, no,
ahead.
all good. No, I cut you off actually because we were talking about
Um,
pattern recognition, and then I got sidetracked with my little phone phone story or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, no,
um,
you get
yeah, as I was saying, it's just I've seen this before, and the people that I'm speaking to are people who are new to the market. There's not a lot of the experienced investors. It's the same story. If you've been listening, Keenan and I are very repetitive with the things that we say because it's month to month, right? And so real estate being something that's a little bit more slower moving than stocks and stuff like that, it's easier to see some of these trends and kind of anticipate what's going to happen next based on what else is going on outside of real estate, right? But the people I'm speaking with, it's like their first house. They're like, yeah. I want to buy my first rental. Like you talk about, going through a lot. Could you kind of elaborate a little bit more, like what I should look for and things like that, and the tenant screening things. And so there's going to be a lot of people getting into real estate in the next couple of years here, new investors, especially. And I'm excited for everyone, especially just getting into the business, because although real estate can be stressful, right, as we both know this,
Mhm.
it's a great business to be in.
It sure is. And
Yeah.
no business that doesn't involve, well, let me rephrase that. If your work isn't stressful, it's probably not challenging enough for you.
Yeah.
So I find a huge amount of reward in being able to navigate sometimes difficult conversations where there's probably no real answer. And
Yeah.
real estate is a wonderful industry for being able to provide that challenge, because as much as it's an objective industry where there are numbers and there are facts and there are details, it's also very emotional, where there are people and there are situations and there are families that have matters that need to be addressed directly as well. And I find the combination of both of them very appealing to somebody with a personality like my own. But
Yes,
with
Keenan, your personality is very appealing.
okay, I don't know that I said that exactly, but I'm glad you feel that way, Denzel.
uh,
With with all of those kind of predictions and all of those ideas that 2025 is going to be such a good year for real estate in general, Denzel, I'd like to just ask you a little bit about how you felt 2024 wrapped up, because you know, we very often talk about how important it is to see what's coming, but I also think it's worth it to sort of look backwards and say, hey, how did things go in general? So, just in a couple words here, describe how you feel your 2024 went overall, and kind of to follow that up, if there is anything that you would have changed if you could have, or anything you wish you knew before it happened, I'd love to hear that.
uh, is this more of my personal perspective, you think, or just
Yeah, like from
very
your own
general?
personal perspective or whatever you
Yeah.
want.
So I think that 2024 for my business, this easily was the best year I've ever had in real estate. Um,
Nice.
yeah, it was a great year. I learned a ton of lessons over between 2022 and 2023. I made 2024 at the beginning. I made a promise to myself that this was going to be the best year, and I was going to make sure that that happened. And it was just each and every day, waking up in the morning, trying my best to make things happen, and just grinding every single day, long hours. And it was a great year. If I could change anything, the with especially with flipping, it's never going to change. It's speed kills deals. So if you're taking too long on a flip, or if your timing is not um, well thought out, it's really tough to be successful in this business. You might be disappointed when you go to the market and the market's not willing to pay you what you originally were hoping to sell for because of X, Y, and Z, right? So an example is, I think that anyone who bought a little late in the spring, so let's call it June or even in May, and you were listing in July, August, September, you probably would have got disappointed, because I don't know a lot of other flippers that I've spoken with who actually were able to sell the properties that they were hoping for the numbers that they wanted.
Mhm.
And that's just market conditions, right? It's part of the risk that we all take when you're buying and selling real estate like that, and you're trading the market. But I just think that if I could go back in time, I would be telling Denzel, okay, maybe we just wholesale these ones, because we all know how the fall market's going to be. And if it's not exactly a conventional product that everybody is looking for, so we're talking about 1,000 square feet, 3 bedroom bungalow, 50s or newer, with a garage in a good area, then it might take a little bit longer to sell that product, right? So just be paying close attention. And so this year, uh, that we're going to make that adjustment and just be a little bit more cognizant as we navigate through the end of the spring, and really, excuse me, be a little bit more. choosy, I guess you could say, with which deals we're going to take on and which ones we'll move on from.
I think that's a great answer. And I know that you've never really been a huge fan of fall listings in
Yeah,
particular.
yeah,
And
you're right.
like I know that you haven't had the best luck with them, so I'll just make a note here for first of all the casual investors and especially the home buyers out there. Fall is a tough time to list, but it's also a tough time to buy. And the reason being is the demand is often not quite where it needs to be for a bidding war strategy to take place and have adequate protection for the seller. But as a buyer, because of that, it means that pricing is generally going to be more elevated compared to other times in the year. So as a purchaser, you're going to be shopping for product that's priced higher, but you're less likely to compete. Therefore, you might get to do more due diligence and take your time a little more and not have to fight quite as hard as you would have in the spring. However, there will be fewer houses to choose from and there are more money. So, in some ways, it's a lot easier in the spring because deals happen much quicker. The buyers are a little bit more desperate for those deals when they do come, but they're also way less protected than they would be had they had the opportunity to do all the due diligence that they might have wanted. And sometimes that the due diligence comes because they had to pay more for it. Other times they don't have to. It's not consistent. But I think as a flipper in general, in my opinion, I think that getting things off the books without waiting 30 plus days for the offer to come is better business than it is to sit around with a high price and wait for the market to come to you, especially in a situation where the buyer could tie up a house for a week or more with conditions and concessions, et cetera, et cetera. I know it makes it harder as somebody that works obviously very closely with you and others. So figured I'd throw in my 2 cents there. But as a regular home seller, like for somebody, for example, that just lives in a house and wants to sell it, there's nothing wrong with selling in the late summer or the fall. It can actually be really good. And the showing schedule will probably be less onerous than it would at other times of year. And you're very unlikely to get a significantly different outcome than you would if you did sell in the spring. Like often the market hasn't changed that much in terms of what people are paying. It's just the activity level that's going to be a little bit different. And I, as an agent, can work with you as a seller to make sure that your pricing strategy and your expectations that you're putting out to the market are actually in line with what the buyers out there are thinking at the time. So you don't make a mistake, you don't cost yourself any unnecessary money, and that you walk away with the cleanest deal for the largest amount that you are possibly able to achieve. So once again, give me a call. Be happy to consult. Um, Denzel, about
Yep.
we've now talked a lot about the upward market. We've talked about fall markets and how pricing strategy differs, and how for those investors who have been around for 4 or 5 years now, they have a little bit of wisdom based on how things have changed over the past little while, and they are likely to view their opportunities to purchase a little bit differently than somebody who's just freshly entering the market. Um, I know that you were coached for a few years on how to actually do real estate deals. And I would like to hear your opinion on the following. When you typically, when we set ARVs, we look at historical data only. We both think that the market is set to rise. How much of the market acceleration do you price in to your ARVs? And what do you think is appropriate given, first of all, what you were taught, and second of all, what you know now?
I think that I'll start off with kind of going how I was taught when I was getting coached at the time. And the people that I was dealing with, they had said that they usually price in about 5% more than what the ARV was. So if we're looking at, let's call it, a $400,000 ARV, they're thinking 420 by the time it's done. And that's fair. It really depends on what data that you're taking into consideration. what month that you're buying that particular property in, and just again the overall trends to justify that kind of increase in price. And so, sorry, one second here. I have
Oh,
my
good.
little one. I'm actually gonna. Oh, you know what? She's a little sick right now. Here she is.
Hi, Savea.
All right. Um, sorry, one second.
This is what happens.
Um,
Or go
when you
ahead.
have kids, guys.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Um,
So anyway,
yeah,
they
so
priced in about 5% to what
yes,
they think the ARV will be if they think the market's set to accelerate. That's
yes,
just
they
the rule
priced
of
in about,
thumb, 5%. Okay. Yeah.
yeah. Now that strategy needs to be used very responsibly, and you need to be, if you're going to be doing that, because I do think that you might miss out on some great opportunities if you're n- I'm not saying not doing that, but you may miss out on some exceptional opportunities if you're too conservative at this point in time, because
Mhm.
you're looking at all of the sales data from the fall of 2024, and I think almost everyone can agree here that we should have a bit of an uptick over the next 4 months. Might be 5%, it might be 7%, but it is going to be higher. Well, who knows? Something catastrophic can change things, but that's what the sentiment is, right? And so, um, for me personally, going into this spring market, I'm probably going to just tread carefully. I'm not going to go and use a rule of thumb to dictate what I'm going to be comping things out for and what the prices are possibly going to be. Um, if the market really heats up and we start to see a huge hockey stick like trend upwards over the next 4 months, yeah, then maybe we might use 5 points as like a it's like a okay, if we're buying in June, or sorry, January, by April, we might see 420, 430, right? But it really has to do with what the property is. Because I do believe that, a century home in the west end of Winnipeg, I'll use the west end as an example, isn't likely to get as much attention as a bungalow that's selling in the same area because the housing matters, right? The type of house
Yes.
matters. So there's a lot of variables that kind of have to be taken into consideration if you are going to be pricing in price increases to your ARVs. Um, and just be careful out there because you also could I've seen people talk themselves into doing terrible deals before because they just want to do a deal, right? And they get to the end and then they make like 5 grand and they're like, well, that was a waste of time. And I've done it. I've done it. When you don't have anything coming in your pipeline, when you're thinking about or wondering when the next deal is going to come up, you just try to make it happen. If I do the painting myself and if I hire this one specific contractor who I don't really like that much, but I know he could do it for less, like you'll try to make it work. But if it's really not penciling, guys, like just don't do it, right? Like there's lots of deals out there. If you end up only doing one this year, that's okay. I'm obviously full time and I'm trying to buy a deal a week this year. Um, and that's because of the time that me and Keenan both put in. So yeah,
Well, good answer. And actually, I think one of the side effects of what generally happens when real estate markets start to rise is the popularity of real estate coaching and students seeking mentorship and guidance, especially in the flipping space, tends to actually go, it becomes much more popular.
yeah.
And I'm wondering, Denzel, as somebody that was formerly involved in the coaching space, I don't know if you still are. Maybe you are. I'm not actually sure. But do you come across people in your own life or your day-to-day conversations that are seeking that kind of thing? Like I know for me, I've had a few people reach out and ask me to explain how to flip houses to them. I've had people reach out to me and ask what it's like to be a realtor. I've had realtors reach out to me and ask questions about working with investors. And this is something that hasn't happened for a while. So I'm wondering if you've had the same experience.
I think that for me personally, I haven't had too many people reach out trying to you know, pick my brain. I used to get that a lot a few years back. Might have something to do with me not being as active on social media these days. But yeah, I haven't really gotten too many people ask me about it. When I start getting going, and let's just say it's a new person that I've just recently met who's not involved in real estate at all, and I start to give them an idea of like what I do, then they start asking questions like, "Oh, how do you get the money to do that?" And is it hard to find a contractor? How do you find these kinds of deals? And it's a long conversation. I usually just say, uh, I've been doing this for a long time, so I kind of it just feels like riding a bike at this point, right? And so I don't really feel that uh, I personally had a lot of people directly come and ask me for coaching or anything like that. Although I would be open to the idea, but with the amount of business that we both do, really tough to commit that time uh, to help somebody, because I'll just be frank and say that not everyone is built to do real estate and be an active investor, because it is a lot of hard work. There is a lot of sacrifice that goes into this side hustle for some. And if you're not one who likes to get your hands dirty, or it just feels too much of a daunting task to do a real estate deal, then it's probably not your cup of tea.
And that's okay, by the way.
And that's
I
totally
agree
fine. Yeah.
that not everybody should be a active real estate investor. And I would say that if you think that your personality isn't a good fit to get involved and do hard deals and like flip a house, that's cool. There's still lots of ways that you could participate in the real estate market for income. And I would say that if you think that's the case, then buying rental property, especially turnkey rentals, is a fabulous way for you to experience the gain of real estate without experiencing all of the things that come with trying to flip property or chain a bunch of burrs together,
Yeah.
um, which I know is, as Denzel just alluded to, it's more than a full-time job. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I've had people ask me like, "Oh, how many hours a week do you work?" And I always kind of laugh at the question, because it's like, well, here's the thing. Like, there is no real answer to that, because if I'm driving somewhere like to the gym and I take a call, is that working? And they go, "Well, yeah, I'd say so." And I say, "Okay, great. How about if I'm driving between houses that I'm showing, but I don't talk on the phone while doing that? Is that working?" They go, "Well, yeah, I'd say that's working." I'd say, "Okay, what if I am voice to text texting in the car while driving to the office in the morning, but I'm only going to go to the office because I just need to do some deal sheets and stuff. Like, is that working while I'm doing that?" And they say, "Yeah, yeah, I'd say that's working." I say, "Okay, how about if I'm pushing a grocery cart and I send a text message or I send an email to somebody with a listing? Is that working?" "Well, yeah." And I'd say, "Pretty much then if I'm awake, I'm probably working by
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
that definition." But again, it's sporadic, and it doesn't mean every second like I'm wearing my dress shirt and I'm walking around and like, "Oh, hey, I'm showing houses 18 hours a day." That's absurd. No.
Yeah.
But um I say it's a lifestyle in that you kind of got to be ready for anything all the time.
Yeah.
And I know that Denzel is ready for anything anytime. I am ready for anything anytime, despite being a little bit sick, but I think the whole city of Winnipeg is a little bit sick right now.
Yeah.
It's it's always one of those things where a deal is going to come up and you just got to act. And
Yeah.
that's the magnificent part about this industry, is the more you put in, the more you get out. It doesn't
Yeah.
take a scientist to put two and two together. If you're willing to make the effort, you're gonna be rewarded.
Yeah.
So
It's almost like there's instances in your day where you just choose to go hard and like actually have really focused deep work hours. Generally that could be anywhere from 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And then after five, you just kind of casually work. You're on the phone and stuff like that. But the long days are coming. That's for sure. I
yeah,
can say that. I can see it already.
oh, believe me, I
Yeah.
can already anticipate it as well. Like, I looked at my calendar for the next week, and this is really the first week that I've actually got real estate appointments like plugging up Monday through Friday, which is something that I haven't seen a lot in the Christmas and New Year season. Thankfully, most of the
Yeah.
people that I'm working with kind of thought, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna just wait and push it into 2025. But yeah, starting Monday, it is on. And if you're listening to this in that week of the 6th through the I believe the 10th. You just watch. It's going to be even crazier as we move towards the end of the month here, and I want you guys all to be involved and active, because the party starts now if it hasn't already. And like Denzel's listing 6 houses. That's incredibly inspiring, and it makes me want to list 6 houses. Even though I think I'm going to list a few of those myself.
Yeah.
But I also want to help people buy 6 houses. Not all for themselves, but 6 different people. How about that? Or maybe I'll sell Denzel 6. I don't know. Depends on the deal. But
sell me 6.
Yeah, if I can find you 6 that you'll do, I'd be pretty impressed with myself. But actually, that's a good transition to my next point here. So you've got the 6 coming up in January. How's your February and March listing supply picture looking at this point? And how are you doing staying on top of all of the projects that you've got, including the work on some of the rental properties you were talking about last episode?
Well, I'll start with the organization piece, and I think just making sure that each and every day I have a look. I have a spreadsheet that I use, like a lot of people who want to stay on top of their projects, and I kind of just go line property by property. There's usually like at least one action item per property that I try to knock off, that I'll put together at the start of every week. Um, and I try to meet the goals that I put out for myself by the end of the week for all of the houses that I have ongoing. For the supply picture coming into the February and in March, there actually isn't a whole lot. Here we go. Oh, she wants to get in on there.
Yeah.
She looks crazy right now. She just woke up from a nap. Hey, go sit down.
Excellent.
Oh, 1 second.
Denzel's just busy being a dad here, everybody.
Yeah, so I think we don't really have a whole lot coming up in February and March. I do have a goal of mine to sell as many rental properties as I possibly can. This year, I have 3 that I'm selling in the first quarter, and then probably another 3 or 4 in the second quarter. So from January to June, I'm going to be selling at least somewhere between like 4 to 7 rental properties. And then on top of that, when I was away on vacation in the middle of December, and I ended up buying another property, but we won't be able to work on that until I would say April. So it's a little quiet for February and March right now, but I know that I've made some mistakes in the past where, just like every other investor, they're very eager to find opportunities at this time of the year, and then they're forcing deals just to say that they did a deal, right? A lot of people have been there, especially if you're doing a lot of volume. And so for this year, I want to be practicing patience a little bit more and making sure that while if I'm not doing anything and I'm not negotiating a deal, it's not a bad thing, right? It just means that the leads will come as long as you're doing a lot of that back end work, whether that's phoning realtors or making offers on MLS or whatever your strategies are to find opportunity. Yeah, so just being a little bit more patient with it. Because I know that last year when it was January 2nd, I was like, hey, let's go. I'm looking for a house. Right.
Yeah.
But this year, a little bit more of a, I would say, methodical approach to how I want this year to look like. So yeah.
Smart. I think that all of that makes really good sense. And I agree with the idea that you don't need to try to force like monthly targets. I think that's one of actually the huge flaws in the real estate industry, whether as a realtor or an investor, is people talk a lot about how many deals they do a month. And I think that's completely the wrong way to look at a business. I think you need to be looking at your business at least by quarters, if not by halves. And the reason for that is you often can't control when the right deal comes as an investor. And if you are doing a very consistent amount monthly, to me, it probably means some, if not all, are being forced. Unless you've got some secret sauce, then go and start making Facebook and Instagram reels and sell courses. But We all
Yeah.
know those guys don't actually do deals, but
Shots
sorry.
fired.
Yeah, shots
I'm
fired.
just kidding.
Um, and as a realtor, I also think it's wrong because if you are doing consistent, like bang, bang, bang numbers every month, and it's not fluctuating in a pretty big direction month over month, it means you're probably forcing people into deals or you are underselling stuff,
Oh, yeah.
which I never want to be accused of either. I don't think that I force people into deals, and I don't think that I sell people out. And I know there may or may not be people who do that, and everybody's situation is different. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I'm very cognizant of that personally. And so when I evaluate like my business as a realtor, I don't really care about having a super strong or super weak month. I like to look at the bigger picture, especially a year-long picture. But I'll break things down into quarters because it's a little bit more digestible and uh, you know the benchmark kind of, okay, we hit this point, let's see how we're doing, is a pretty good thing to look at. Does that make sense to you, Denzel?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Oh, good. I'm glad we're on the same page with that one. Now we're almost at time here, but I am going to wrap this up with one question for you, and let's close this off by asking Denzel, where do you think the benchmark price is going to be next data point for the February 2022 episode? Like our January
Oh,
dot is going to hit what?
let's see. Where are we right now? We are at,
We're at
as of December.
414,900.
Oh, well, I mean, guys, someone paid 500 grand in the Maples, so
They
um,
did, yeah.
let's see. It's got to be by the end of this month. It's got to be at least 430, 435.
Wow. Okay, that's a 5% jump,
Yeah.
give or
I
take.
mean, if
Yeah,
we look at January of last year, I mean, I don't think I have the ability to see that. I'd have to go back to your Substack article
yeah,
from that from January 2024. Oh, sorry. Yeah,
yeah.
2024.
January
But
2024. Yeah,
but I just remember it being crazy hot. Like we bought it, me and Keenan bought a house on Inkster. I think it was in January for what was it,
it
92,000
was
or
like
something like that.
90. Yeah, it was 96 or 98 or something like
Yeah,
that.
something,
It
yeah,
was sub six figures for sure.
yeah, somewhere in the 90s. And we there was like there was it was literally 0 days on market. And we went to go see it the minute that it got listed. And there was like 3 showings booked like right away. And anything that was like a fixer upper sold immediately.
Yep.
Like there was me and Keenan, we went to go look at a house um on McCrae right near McPhillips, just east of McPhillips. And it was listed for 249, had how many offers? 8 offers on offer night and sells for 30K more. And the house needed probably about 70 grand, 75, 80 grand. So yeah, I think that we have to at least see a 5% increase from where we are right now. What about you?
Okay. I wasn't going to say 5%. I think that would be maybe something I'd expect in the next update. However, I made a pretty good chart here, and I'm going to pull it up. Not that I'm wasting my time here as I think about this, haha. But
Stalling.
yeah, not that I'm installing, but I previously predicted that Jan 2025 would put us at a benchmark price of 425, which
Okay, I said
is
430, 435.
yeah, which is about a 2.5% kind of gain. That was my prediction a little while ago. Now we're 5 days in, so I don't know that any of the data that I have materially changes my guess. But the overall trend that I kind of drew for the year was about 2.5% in January, and then February was going to be like a big gain. And then March was another big gain, and then April and May would slowly taper down into a high at June where we nailed a 472, which people say I'm crazy for thinking. But We
We
shall
shall
see.
see.
Yeah. It, if it happens, I'll be pretty impressed. And at that point, I guess I got to start thinking about what's next, because I've already started to been asked. Like, technically, we haven't hit the all-time high yet, but people are saying, "Okay, Keenan, like you're probably right. Like now we kind of see the writings on the wall. So what's next?" And I go, "I haven't
Yeah.
thought that far ahead yet. I need to see how this spring plays out first before I can derive what's going to happen in 2026." But that's it's a conversation for another time, I suppose. Um, any closing thoughts here, Denzel, or anything you'd like to add or throw out there for the listeners?
No, nothing really.
Okay.
Except that I can't say this enough. For any of you new investors, if you're really ambitious and you're one of those go-getter types, just move forward responsibly, especially if you're using other people's money. Um, I can't
Good
stress that
advice.
enough. This
Good
is where
advice.
mistakes are made and where, people get caught drunk off of the juice when the market's going crazy. So just, you know, make good decisions out there, hire Keenan, and you'll be all right.
You'll love to see it. I'd be happy to help you guys.
Yeah.
So if you do require assistance, yeah, I'll make sure that you do good deals.
Yeah. Oh, and also you can also reach out to me on Instagram, um, at Denzel Sullivan. You could send me a DM and I'll get back. I'll message you back when I can, if you have any questions as well.
Good stuff. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for now being with us for over a year here. I'm very much looking forward to 2025, and I'm expecting pretty great things from this year. So let's hope as a city we can all start to feel better, because it seems like everybody in Winnipeg is sick right now, which is great. Um, and let's hope by February all of our stuffy noses, sore throats, and coughs have gone away for good, and that we're back to health and a year of prosperity here. So
Yes.
thank you again, and Denzel, you and I will talk in the morning.
All right.
Yeah, see you guys later.